The dinner that changed everything. The roast chicken sat in the center of the table, golden and perfect, steam rising from its crispy skin. Sarah had spent 2 hours preparing it, the way Robert's mother had taught her during their first year of marriage. Funny how she'd absorbed so many of these small rituals over the past 8 years. The correct way to season poultry, the proper arrangement of silverware, the unspoken rule that Robert's father always carved the meat. She watched David, her father-in-law, sharpen the carving knife with practiced strokes. The metallic whisper filled the dining room, punctuating the comfortable murmur of conversation. Robert's mother, Patricia, was saying something about the church fundraiser. Sarah's own parents had called earlier to cancel. Her father's back was acting up again, so it was just the 4 of them tonight. "Beautiful bird, Sarah," said David, making the first cut. "You've really mastered Patricia's recipe." Sarah smiled, though something about the compliment always felt slightly barbed. Mastered Patricia's recipe, as if cooking were a test she'd finally passed after years of trying. "She's an excellent cook," Patricia agreed, accepting her plate. "Robert, you're a lucky man." Robert reached over and squeezed Sarah's hand. "I know I am." For a moment, everything felt normal, safe. This was their life. Sunday dinners, polite conversation, the gentle rhythm of family tradition. Sarah had built this. She'd crafted it carefully, piece by piece, compromise by compromise, until it looked exactly like what a good marriage should look like. Then, Robert cleared his throat. She knew that sound. It was the same throat clearing he did before presenting a new investment strategy at work, before making any announcement he'd already decided was brilliant. Her hand tightened around her fork. "So, I've been thinking," Robert began, setting down his knife. "Mom, Dad, I know the house is getting to be a lot for you to manage." Patricia dabbed at her mouth with her napkin. "Oh, we're managing fine, dear." "You say that, but last month Dad fell on those porch steps, and you're both driving less. The maintenance alone must be overwhelming." Sarah's stomach dropped. She knew where this was going. She'd known for weeks, actually, since Robert had started making these pointed observations about his parents' limitations. She'd pushed the thought away each time, told herself she was being paranoid. "We've been talking about downsizing," David admitted, "but we're not ready for one of those retirement communities, not yet." "Exactly," Robert said, and she heard the triumphant in his voice, the sound of a man about to reveal his solution. "Which is why I think you should move in with us." The words landed like a grenade on the dinner table. Sarah's fork clattered against her plate. She hadn't meant to drop it, but her fingers had simply stopped working. Robert continued, oblivious or willfully blind to her reaction. "We have the space. The house is too big for just Sarah and me anyway. You could have the entire east wing, the 2 guest bedrooms, and the bathroom. We'd convert one into a sitting room. You'd have your privacy, we'd have ours, and we'd all be together. It's perfect." Patricia's eyes filled with tears. "Robert, that's so generous." "It makes sense," Robert pressed on, warming to his pitch. "Dad's retirement checks would go further without the house expenses. Mom, you've been saying you want to spend more time with us. And when Sarah and I have kids," he squeezed her hand again, harder this time, "you'd be right here to help." Sarah's breath caught in her throat. When we have kids. They'd been trying for 2 years. 2 years of temperature charts and ovulation apps and disappointment. 2 years of doctors telling them there was no medical reason it wasn't happening, that they should just keep trying, stay relaxed. And now he was using their hypothetical future children as justification for this? She looked at Patricia's glowing face, at David's cautious hope, at her husband's expression of absolute certainty. He hadn't asked her. He hadn't even hinted at this conversation. He'd made a life-altering decision about their home, their future, without saying a single word to her. "Sarah?" Patricia was looking at her expectantly. "What do you think?" What did she think? She thought about coming home from her teaching job to find Patricia rearranging her kitchen cabinets more efficiently. She thought about David's morning routine of playing talk radio at full volume. She thought about the way Patricia commented on her outfits, her housekeeping, her career, always with that smile that made it impossible to object. Just trying to help, dear. She thought about the fights she and Robert had been having lately, the way he'd been staying later at the office, the way they'd stopped really talking, just exchanged information like roommates, coordinating schedules, the way he'd started making decisions alone, then presenting them to her as fait accompli. She thought about their bedroom, the one space that was supposed to be just theirs, and how she'd hear Patricia's footsteps in the hallway outside, how she'd hear the unspoken judgments through the walls. But more than any of that, she thought about how Robert was looking at her right now, expectant, confident, with just the slightest edge of warning in his eyes. Don't make a scene. Don't embarrass me in front of my parents. Be the good wife I married. Sarah opened her mouth, closed it. The silence stretched. She started, and her voice came out strange, unfamiliar to her own ears. Robert's hand tightened on hers under the table, a gentle squeeze that felt like a vice. And something inside Sarah, something that had been bending and bending for 8 years, finally snapped. No. The word hung in the air like the ghost of something dangerous. Sorry? Robert's smile was frozen on his face. No, Sarah repeated, pulling her hand from his. This is not happening. Patricia's fork paused halfway to her mouth. David set down his wineglass carefully, as if afraid any sudden movement might shatter whatever was happening. Sarah, Robert said quietly, his voice laced with warning. Maybe we should discuss this later. You should have discussed it with me before, Sarah said, and she was amazed at how steady her voice sounded when her entire body was shaking. Before you invited your parents to move into our home, before you redesigned our house in your head, before you made plans for our future without including me in a single conversation. I didn't invite them yet, Robert said, his jaw tightening. I was suggesting it, as a family. I thought you'd what? Smile and nod? Play the supportive wife? Sarah pushed back from the table, her chair scraping loudly against the hardwood. You didn't think at all, Robert. You decided, and you assumed I'd just go along with it because that's what I always do. Sarah, please. Patricia's voice was gentle, hurt. We didn't mean to cause any trouble. If you're uncomfortable, it's not about being uncomfortable, Sarah said, forcing herself to meet Patricia's eyes. I love you both, I do. But this is my home too, mine and Robert's, and he doesn't get to give it away without asking me first. I wasn't giving it away, Robert snapped, his composure finally cracking. God, Sarah, they're my parents. They raised me. They need help, and we have the space. This is what families do. Families talk to each other. Families make decisions together. What we are, right now, this is not a family. This is you issuing a proclamation and expecting everyone to bow down. The words felt like fire in her mouth, like truth she'd been swallowing for years, finally burning its way out. I think we need a moment, David said quietly, starting to stand. No, Sarah said. Please, stay, because this needs to be said in front of everyone. She turned back to Robert. You know what the worst part is? You've been doing this for months, making decisions without me. You took that job transfer without discussing whether I wanted to leave my school. You told your brother we'd host Thanksgiving without asking if I could handle it during parent-teacher conferences. You bought a new car, a $40,000 car, without even mentioning you were looking. That's not fair, Robert said, but his face had gone pale. It's completely fair. And every time I've bent, I've adjusted. I've made it work because I thought that's what marriage was. Compromise, flexibility. But this? She gestured at the table, at his parents, at the perfectly roasted chicken that suddenly seemed like a symbol of every performance she'd given. This is not compromise, Robert. This is you making decisions and me living with the consequences. They're my parents, Robert repeated, but his voice was smaller now. And this is my life, Sarah said. The tears came then, hot and sudden. I teach 26 fourth graders every day. I come home exhausted and still manage to keep this house running because you work late every night. I coordinate our social calendar, remember everyone's birthdays, make sure your parents feel included. I've been trying so hard to be everything you need me to be." She wiped at her eyes roughly, angry at herself for crying, angrier still that she'd held this in so long. "But you know what I can't be? I can't be the wife who smiles while you erase her from her own life. I can't live in a house where I'm constantly being monitored and judged and helped by people who think I'm never quite good enough. I can't share my space, my privacy, my marriage, because you're too afraid to tell your parents no." Patricia's face had crumbled. "Sarah, we don't think you're not good enough." "Don't you?" Sarah asked, and her voice broke. "Every casserole recipe you've given me comes with a story about how Robert loves it the right way. Every time you visit, you reorganize something because it's easier to find. You tell me my career is sweet and wonder aloud when I'll focus on giving you grandchildren. You do it all with love, I know that. But it's still judgment. It's still control." She turned back to Robert. "And you let it happen. You've let them treat me like a project to be improved instead of a person to be respected. Because it's easier than setting boundaries. Because you don't want to be the bad son." "That's not true," Robert said, but his voice was hollow. "Isn't it? When's the last time you defended me when your mother made a comment about my housekeeping? When's the last time you told your father he couldn't just drop by unannounced? You want me to welcome them with open arms to live here permanently, but you've never once protected my space from them temporarily?" The silence that followed was suffocating. David spoke first, his voice rough. "Robert, is this true?" Robert stared at his plate. I thought Sarah understood that family is important, that we make sacrifices." "But who's doing the sacrificing? Because from where I'm sitting, it sounds like it's only been one person." Patricia's face was crying, silent tears sliding down her face. "We should go." "Mom," Robert started. "We should go," Patricia repeated, standing on shaking legs. "Sarah, I'm so sorry. I thought we had a good relationship. I thought you were happy with our help." The guilt crashed over Sarah like a wave. This was the worst part, the part that she'd hurt these people she genuinely loved, where she became the villain in their story. But she couldn't take it back. She couldn't unsay what had finally been said. "I know you meant well. I know you love Robert. I know you love me, in your way. But I need to be more than just Robert's wife in this relationship. I need to be a partner, an equal. And that can't happen if you're living in our house, if there's no space that's just ours, if every decision becomes a family committee." David guided Patricia toward the door, his hand steady on her back. At the threshold, he turned to look at his son. "Robert, we taught you better than this. Your mother and we built a marriage on respect, on talking things through. I don't know when you forgot that, but you need to remember it, fast." The door closed behind them with a soft click. Sarah and Robert stood in the suddenly cavernous dining room, the uneaten dinner between them, the silence so heavy it felt physical. "Are you happy now?" Robert finally said, his voice acid. "You humiliated them. You humiliated me." "No," Sarah said tiredly, "you humiliated yourself. I just refuse to be silent about it anymore." She walked to their bedroom and closed the door, leaving her husband alone with the dinner she'd cooked and the family she'd supposedly destroyed. The next 3 days were a special kind of hell. Robert slept on the couch, not because Sarah asked him to, but because he chose to. He left for work early and came home late, communicating only in terse text messages about logistics. "Working late. Don't wait up. Taking the car in. Need a ride? Parents want to talk. Going there for dinner." Sarah taught her classes in a fog, smiled at her students, graded papers with mechanical precision. She came home to an empty house and ordered takeout she barely touched. The chicken was still in the fridge, untouched since Sunday. She couldn't bring herself to throw it away or eat it. It sat there like evidence at a crime scene. On Wednesday, her best friend Maya called. "I heard," Maya said without preamble. Patricia called her sister, who called my mom, who called me. The church phone tree is working overtime. Great, Sarah muttered, pressing her forehead against the cool kitchen counter. I'm the villain of the week. Are you kidding? You're everyone's hero. Do you know how many wives are living this exact nightmare? How many women are slowly disappearing into what their husbands and in-laws want them to be? You said what everyone's thinking. I made Patricia cry. Patricia will live. Robert will live. The question is, will you? If this doesn't change, if you keep bending and bending, will there be anything left of Sarah? The question sat in Sarah's chest like a stone. That night, Robert came home at 7. Actually home, not just passing through to grab clothes. We need to talk, he said. They sat at opposite ends of the couch, the space between them a chasm. I've been thinking. Robert started, then stopped. Started again. I talked to my parents, and to my dad's friend from his therapy group, the marriage counselor. Sarah waited. He asked me a question. He continued, not meeting her eyes. He asked when I stopped seeing you as a person and started seeing you as a role. Wife, daughter-in-law, future mother. When did I stop seeing Sarah? His voice cracked on her name. I couldn't answer him because I don't know when it happened. We got married and suddenly there was all this pressure to be the perfect son, the perfect husband, to make everyone happy. And somewhere in trying to manage all of that, I forgot that making you happy was supposed to be the whole point. Sarah felt tears prick her eyes, but forced them back. I'm not saying what I did was right. It wasn't. It was incredibly disrespectful and presumptuous and stupid. But I need you to understand, I thought I was doing something good. I thought I was taking care of my parents and solving a problem. By creating a bigger problem, Sarah said softly. He finally looked at her, and she saw real pain in his eyes. I've been an asshole. Not just about this. About everything. The job transfer, I was so focused on the career opportunity that I didn't think about what you would be giving up. The car, I justified it as being practical, but really I just wanted it and didn't want to hear you say no. Thanksgiving, you wanted your brother's approval. I wanted everyone's approval except yours, because I assumed I already had yours. I took you for granted. I took us for granted. The admission hung between them. Robert, Sarah said carefully, I don't want to be the wife who says no to everything. I don't want to be the obstacle between you and your parents. But I can't be the person who just disappears into everyone else's needs either. I know. Do you? Because this has been building for years. Every time you made a decision without me, every time you prioritized their comfort over mine, every time you let them treat our home like it was still their house, it chipped away at me, at us. Robert moved closer, cautiously, like approaching a wounded animal. Tell me how to fix it. I don't know if you can, Sarah said, and watched him flinch. This isn't about your parents moving in. That was just the moment I couldn't pretend anymore. This is about the fact that I don't trust you to protect our marriage, to protect me. Then let me earn it back. His hand hovered near hers, not quite touching. Tell me what you need. Sarah thought about it, really thought about it. I need you to mean it when you say our decisions. I need you to check with me before making promises that affect both of us. I need you to set boundaries with your parents that respect our marriage. Not cruel boundaries, not shutting them out, but clear lines between their lives and ours. And I need you to see me, really see me. Not Sarah the teacher, or Sarah the wife, or Sarah the future mother. Just me, the person you fell in love with before all these roles got piled on top. Robert's eyes were wet now. I do see you. God, Sarah, I see you. I see how hard you've been working to hold everything together. I see how much you've sacrificed. I see how much I don't deserve you, and I'm terrified you're going to realize that too. I already know it, Sarah said, but she let herself smile a little. But I also know that people can change, that marriages can survive mistakes, if both people are willing to do the work. I'm willing. He took her hand, and this time she didn't pull away. I'm so willing. I know I don't have the right to ask, but are you? She looked at their joined hands, thought about the 8 years behind them and all the hypothetical years ahead, thought about who she'd been when they met, young and optimistic and so sure that love would be enough, thought about who she was now, stronger, sadder, but finally honest. I'm willing to try. But Robert, if this happens again, if you make another major decision without me, if you prioritize their needs over our marriage, if you take me for granted one more time, I'm done. Do you understand? I won't bend until I break. I'll just leave. He paled. I understand.
Good. She squeezed his hand once, then let go. Now call your parents. Tell them you're sorry for putting them in that position. Tell them we'll help them find a solution, but it won't be moving in with us. And mean it. Robert picked up his phone with shaking hands. The conversation with his parents took 2 hours. Sarah could hear the murmur of voices from the bedroom where she'd retreated, giving them privacy. She heard Robert's voice break more than once. Heard him say, "I'm sorry," so many times it lost meaning and gained it again. When he finally came to bed, he looked exhausted. How did they take it? Sarah asked. Better than I deserved. Dad said he and Mom had been talking and they realized moving in with us wasn't actually what they wanted. They were just scared of being a burden, of aging, of all of it. And when I suggested it, they thought, I don't know, that it was their last chance to be close to me. That's sad. It is. But we talked about other options. There's a 55-plus community near here with independent living apartments. They'd have their own space, but access to services if they need them. And it's 10 minutes away. We could have dinner once a week, help them with whatever they need, but still have boundaries. How do you feel about that? Robert was quiet for a long moment, relieved, he admitted, and guilty for feeling relieved, but mostly relieved. You were right. I was so afraid of being a bad son that I was becoming a bad husband, a bad partner. He rolled toward her in the darkness. My dad said something else. He said when he and Mom were newlyweds, his parents tried to move in with them. And Mom put her foot down, just like you did. She told him the same thing, that they needed to build their own family first, their own traditions, their own space. He said it was the best thing she ever did for their marriage. He never told you that story before? No. I think he assumed I knew, that it was obvious. But I didn't learn boundaries. I learned performance, how to keep everyone happy, how to manage everyone's expectations. Except yours. Sarah let him hold her hand, but didn't move closer. Sarah, will we be okay? I don't know. She answered honestly. But we have a chance now. Before Sunday, I don't think we did. They lay in the darkness, not quite together, but not quite apart, somewhere in the uncertain space where marriages live or die. Thursday afternoon, Patricia called Sarah's cell phone directly. Sarah stared at the screen for 3 rings before answering. Hi, Patricia. Sarah. Patricia's voice was soft, uncertain. I was wondering if you might have time to meet for coffee, just the 2 of us? Every instinct Sarah had screamed to say no, to protect the fragile boundaries she'd just fought so hard to establish. But Maya's voice echoed in her head. Boundaries aren't walls, they're doors you control. Sarah said, tomorrow after school? They met at a cafe halfway between Sarah's school and Patricia's house. Patricia was already there when Sarah arrived, hands wrapped around a mug of tea she didn't seem to be drinking. Thank you for coming, Patricia said as Sarah sat down. I wasn't sure you would. I wasn't sure either, Sarah admitted. Patricia smiled sadly. I appreciate the honesty. I think that's something we haven't had enough of. They sat in silence for a moment, then Patricia spoke, her words careful but genuine. I owe you an apology. Several, actually. When Robert told his father and me about his idea, about
moving in with you, my first reaction was joy, pure, selfish joy. And I didn't stop to think about what it would mean for you, for your marriage. Patricia, please let me finish. Patricia's hands tightened around her mug. I've been thinking about Sunday dinner constantly, replaying everything you said. And you were right about the casserole comments, about reorganizing your kitchen, about all of it. I thought I was being helpful, but I was being controlling. Sarah's throat tightened. The truth is, Patricia continued, I think I've been jealous, which is ridiculous. I'm a grown woman jealous of my own daughter-in-law. But watching you and Robert build your life together, I kept seeing all the things I didn't do. I got married at 20, pregnant at 21, and spent 30 years making my entire identity about being a wife and mother. I never had a career like yours, never had that independence. Patricia, you raised 3 amazing kids and supported your husband and it was good. It was. But it was also limiting. And instead of being happy that Robert married someone who has the things I didn't, I've been trying to mold you into what I was. Because that's what I understand. That's what feels safe. Sarah's throat tightened. The truth is, Patricia continued, I think I've been jealous, which is ridiculous. I'm a grown woman jealous of my own daughter-in-law. But watching you and Robert build your life together, I kept seeing all the things I didn't do. I got married at 20, pregnant at 21, and spent 30 years making my entire identity about being a wife and mother. I never had a career like yours, never had that independence. Patricia, you raised 3 amazing kids and supported your husband and it was good. It was. But it was also limiting. And instead of being happy that Robert married someone who has the things I didn't, I've been trying to mold you into what I was because that's what I understand. That's what feels safe. Sarah felt tears building and tried to blink them back. You don't need to be me, Patricia said. You don't need my recipes or my organizational system or my approval. You need to be Sarah, and Robert needs to be married to Sarah, not to some version of his mother. I don't want to cut you out of our lives, Sarah said, the words rushing out. I know Sunday made it sound like I hate you, but I don't. I love you, You needed space to breathe, Patricia finished. To be yourself in your own home, to have a marriage that's yours and Robert's, not a family committee. She reached across the table and Sarah took her hand. I understand, and I'll work on it. I will. The comments, the dropping by, the helpful suggestions, I'll stop, or try to stop. You'll have to tell me if I slip, because I've been doing it so long, I don't always realize. I can do that, Sarah said. If you promise not to hate me for it, I could never hate you. You're the best thing that ever happened to my son, even if it took me way too long to see it. Patricia squeezed her hand. And Sarah, thank you. For what? For loving him enough to tell the truth, for being brave enough to fight for your marriage. I wish I'd had that kind of courage at your age. My mother-in-law lived with us for 5 years. I never said a word, just smiled and adjusted and slowly disappeared. I don't want that for you. They talked for another hour, really talked, sharing stories and fears and hopes like they should have been doing all along. When they finally stood to leave, Patricia hugged her tightly. Once a week for dinner, and we'll call first. Is that okay? That's perfect, Sarah said, and meant it. Friday night, Sarah and Robert had their first session with Dr. Chen, the marriage counselor Robert's father had recommended. It was awkward and painful and absolutely necessary. Dr. Chen asked hard questions. She made them tell their sides of Sunday's dinner, then asked what they'd each been feeling in the months leading up to it. She pointed out patterns. Robert's avoidance of conflict, Sarah's tendency to accommodate until she exploded, the way they'd stopped checking in with each other emotionally. You've been married for 8 years, Dr. Chen said toward the end of the session, but you've been roommates for at least 2. Polite, coordinated, but not intimate. not vulnerable with each other. Robert and Sarah exchanged glances. Your homework, Dr. Chen continued, is to have one real conversation a day. Not about logistics, not about what's for dinner or who's picking up dry cleaning. About feelings, about fears, about what you need from each other. Start rebuilding the emotional intimacy you've lost. In the parking lot afterward, Robert took Sarah's hand. I'm sorry, he said for what felt like the 100th time. I know. I'm going to keep saying it until you believe me. Sarah looked at him, really looked at him, saw the man she'd fallen in love with still there, underneath the layers of habit and hurt, saw genuine remorse and determination and fear. I'm starting to, she said. That night, they had their first real conversation in months. Sitting on the porch with wine and blankets against the October chill, they talked about everything they'd been avoiding. Sarah admitted how scared she'd been that their marriage was becoming like her parents, functional but empty. Robert confessed that his late nights at the office were partly because he didn't know how to fix the distance between them, so he'd been avoiding coming home. I miss you, he said simply. I miss us. Me too, Sarah whispered. It wasn't fixed. It wouldn't be fixed for a long time, but it was a start. 3 months later, Sarah stood in her kitchen preparing dinner. Not chicken this time. Never chicken again, they'd joked, but salmon with asparagus. Simple and good. Robert came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. Need help? You could set the table. He kissed her neck. For four? For four. Robert's parents were coming for dinner, as they had most Friday nights since October. But the dynamic had shifted. They arrived at the agreed-upon time. They asked before offering advice. They respected when Sarah or Robert said, let us handle this ourselves. It wasn't perfect. Patricia still occasionally forgot and reorganized a cabinet, but she caught herself, apologized, learned. More importantly, Sarah and Robert were learning too. They went to Dr. Chen every other week. They had their daily conversations, which gradually became longer, deeper, easier. They fought sometimes, but fought fair. They disagreed, but discussed instead of Robert deciding and Sarah acquiescing. Last week, Robert had come home excited about a possible promotion. It would mean relocating to Chicago, he'd said. Then immediately, what do you think? It would be amazing for my career, but it would mean you'd have to leave your school again. I told them I needed to talk to you before giving any answer. Sarah had nearly cried with relief. Not because she wanted to move, she didn't, and they decided to decline the promotion, but because he'd asked. He'd put their marriage first. Small things, maybe, but small things that added up to everything. The doorbell rang. Robert went to answer it while Sarah plated the food. She heard Patricia's greeting, David's laughter, the sound of coats being hung and wine being uncorked. Sarah, this smells wonderful, Patricia called from the dining room. Sarah smiled, brought out the plates, sat down at the table with her husband and her in-laws in the house that was finally, truly theirs. Let's eat. And they did, as a family that had learned, the hard way, what families really mean. Not control or obligation or sacrifice, but respect, boundaries, honest dialogue, the courage to speak up even when silence would be easier, especially then. Because marriage, Sarah had learned, wasn't about bending until you broke. It was about standing firm in who you were and finding someone brave enough to stand beside you. Not in front, not behind, beside. Equal. Partners. Together. And that, finally, was enough.